Here's 7 things you can't do in a Marine Corps uniform. If you've ever served before, you're probably going to get a laugh out of reliving some of these absurdities. If you haven't served before, then a lot of these are the case for most branches, but there are a couple that are very unique to just the Marine Corps. Let's dig in. The very first is that you cannot wear a cover indoors. Now, that is going to be the case for whether or not you are in any uniform. And by the way, cover hat, in case you didn't know. The only exception to this really is going to be if you're on duty or in a ceremony. And in those instances, you're going to have a sword, a firearm, or a duty belt on you, and you will know exactly when those instances are. In any other scenario, you take the hat cover off as you walk indoors, and it stays off for the entire duration that you are indoors. And while you're indoors, you don't salute because you're not wearing a cover, unless, again, if you're ceremony or duty, where you are wearing the cover, in which case you would render the salute, even though nobody would salute you back because they're not wearing a cover. They would just say, carry on. Now, another one, and this actually changed in the last 5 years, is that umbrellas were only allowed to be used by females. And that one just recently changed, but it has, for the longest time, it was considered unmasculine for men to carry an umbrella. And so men would just get freaking soaked in uniform while females could use an umbrella. There's even that famous photo of a Marine holding the umbrella over the President of the United States while he's just getting soaked in the rain, which ironically, I knew one of those two guys guarding the gate, or guarding the Oval Office, but funny. Another one is no hands in pockets, which for most people doesn't seem like a big thing, but I guess if you're just walking around like this, and that's kind of I don't know. It is viewed as unprofessional, and so if you had your hands in your pockets sitting around, people would yell at you. The only exception was if you were grabbing something out of your pocket, but even then, you're not really supposed to have anything in your cargo pockets or really much in your pockets other than say a wallet, maybe a phone or car keys. And so the idea is you just keep your hands out and you put them on your hips or clasp them in front of you or put them behind you like you're in parade rest or whatever. You just awkwardly whatever with your hands because they don't want you to just set them in your pockets because it looks unprofessional, lazy, slouched, whatever. And that rule is still in existence. Now, technically, per the uniform order, you can have your hand in your pocket if you're not moving. Definitely not while walking. However, good luck with that in any Marine Corps installation because you're going to get knife-handed and yelled at for having your hands in your pockets. And you get your hands out of your pockets, Marine. Hands out of pockets, Marine, whatever. I don't know any Marine who really hasn't been yelled at for that at some point or another. Another one is no wearing of your camouflage utilities and or PT gear or really any of those everyday wear uniforms off base. So if you're in green on green or your running suit PT gear, really the only thing you're allowed to do is get seen going from your car to your house, or your house to your car, or vice versa, but you're not supposed to wear that stuff out in town at all, even to pump gas. You should change into proper civilian attire. Same with your camouflage utilities. You can't be caught out in town in that. Now, the exception, I suppose, is if it's an emergency and you're on E and you're not going to make it to work and la 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 la. But I always just heard leadership say, well, that's piss poor planning. You could have gotten fuel when you were in your civilian attire, or you could have changed it to civilian attire and then gotten fuel and then changed back into camis or whatever. So just don't get caught off base in uniform because you're going to get spotlighted. People are going to see you. They're going to come up to you and say something. And I actually had a Marine who got NJP'd, not necessarily because he was in camis off base, but because he was wearing camis off base and somebody saw him and came over to say something to him, and then they found illegal things in his vehicle when they walked up to him, and that was kind of all she wrote for him. So it is what it is, but nobody would have come up and said anything if he'd just been in civilian attire. Now, the reason for this, while they say unprofessionalism, is really just to maintain that soft target. If you're just walking around in camouflage utilities, the entire world knows you're a Marine. And so that's just a target on your back that you don't necessarily want, depending on where you are in the world or what people are out there. Now, again, the Army does this, and, the National Guard does this, and the Air Force does this, so you could argue that it's not that big a deal, but it's just the way that the Marine Corps operates. It also helps save the Marine Corps from you being a total idiot out in town and in uniform. So it's kind of hard to distinguish that you're a Marine if you're not in that uniform, right? Or at least it's harder than if you're blatantly wearing the uniform in attire. Here's a goofy one. You can't walk and chew gum. So you are technically allowed to chew gum in uniform, but not walking. So if you're just standing still chewing gum, that would technically be allowed, although you'd have to stand still for a long time because the moment you move, even if you stop chewing to move and then start chewing again, somebody's going to say something to you. Now, if you're sitting at your desk, that would be the exception, but even then, people can consider it inappropriate or unprofessional, and so somebody's probably still going to just take the rule and say, don't chew gum in uniform. Similarly, you're not allowed to walk in uniform while you are eating, drinking, or on the phone. So if you take a phone call, you got to stand still. If you're drinking, if you want to take a sip out of your water, you got to stop walking to take that sip. If you want to eat, you got to be standing to eat or sitting at a table. They don't want you just walking around town, shoving a hot dog down your throat or like pounding, blah, 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 while you're walking. And they don't want you randomly, jabba walking around just looking unprofessional and being slobby and just bouncing around on the phone. They want you to be present and look professional at all times. And then another goofy one is that your socks have to match. Now, even funnier than this is there are certain colors of socks that you're allowed to wear depending on your uniform. So they actually got rid of white socks for like camis in the Marine Corps. So you can't wear white socks with your boots and your trousers. You can wear black or brown or coyote brown, whatever, or green. And I think they even got rid of black to where it's just green and brown, but that may or may not have changed. I don't, who knows? And you can wear white socks in PT gear or black socks in PT gear. But if you had like a white and a black sock because you're just an idiot and you only had mismatching whatever laundry, like that's wrong. So maybe go sockless. Joking, not joking, but like it is what it is. And same with the camis. Like again, they just want uniformity and professionalism. It is what it is. I don't make the rules. Those are the rules. Another just random one here is uniformity and or commander's intent. So commanders can actually make the rule stricter depending on their location, their view on things. So they can say like, well, you would technically be allowed to wear this thing, but not on my base or in my unit or due to the weather, right? For example, the Marine Corps beanie, you're allowed to wear that prior to sunrise and after sunset every day. And some units would just say, it's not cold enough for that, so no, depending on your weather. And then the uniformity side, this one screws people sometimes because the Marine Corps wants everybody to look the same. So if somebody's in a beanie, everybody should be in a beanie. It's kind of the rule. And I remember standing outside in the snow in the freezing ass cold of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri over like Christmas break one year for training for my MOS school. And one idiot didn't have a beanie, lost his beanie. So the whole group had to change out their beanie and put their normal hat on. And it's like 5 degrees. And now your ears are exposed, heat's leaving your head. We're all miserable because this one knucklehead didn't have a beanie on his head, couldn't find it, and we all got punished for it. And that sucked. So uniformity can be a... And then some of the other ones, like Marines are expected to have their hair cut and clean shaven on leave at all times. So there are people where they don't shave while they're on vacation and they can get caught up on that depending on who they run into. And then, we have specific rules about how you roll your sleeves in uniform. They want them to look actually like nice and presentable. And so you can kind of tell like a Marine who cares and a Marine who just doesn't care based on how their sleeves look in uniform. So again, rolling those sleeves is an act of professionalism and it will help you look more put together. So these are some goofy rules the Marine Corps has. What are some of the other ones that other branches have? Comment down below if you've got some really weird ones that other branches of the military have, or, comment about whatever. If you found some of these ridiculous or you think there's another Marine Corps one I missed, let's hear them all out.